The college football season got a little closer today when the Mountain West Conference released its 2023 football schedule. In this video today, I'm going to be going through and reacting to some of the highlights from the schedule, some of the things that jump off the boards, really initial thoughts and reactions to this 2023 schedule for the Mountain West. Number one, pops right off the bat is that when you look at teams that can go out and compete for a New Year's Six, teams that can set themselves up not just by going through and being undefeated or having one or two losses potentially, but also having quality wins that combine with that record. The only team here that truly has a chance to set themselves off to shine, and again, this is not a record prediction. I haven't done that yet. I'll be doing that later this season, this off season, talking about what I think each of these teams are going to do this season overall. So this is not a record prediction video. But the only team that has a chance of coming through is a top contender in the conference, has a chance of going through and winning all their conference games, and also has a non-conference schedule that if they win through is going to reflect well with that schedule, is Boise State. You look at Boise State, they have Washington, UCF, so that's two Power 5 teams right off the bat. Remember, UCF jumping up to join the Big 12 this next season. So that's two Power 5 teams that they have there right off the bat. And then they're going to be playing Memphis, which has traditionally been a great team there out of the American Athletic Conference. And then, of course, the Mountain West slate across the board there. So one FCS opponent, but two Power 5 teams and one team from a high caliber group of 5 conference. And especially one that the Mountain West might end up competing with here at the end of the year when you're having to rank those conference champions at the end. Memphis, always a team that seems to be in it, not so much last year, but always a team that seems to be in it. You look at the rest of these teams, so you say, it's so hard to say what this conference is going to do because they were so bad last year. It was really a down year for the conference. You had some teams that stood out, Air Force, Fresno State, and Boise State really kind of shone through. However, you had a lot of teams going with less than 8 wins across the board, and so it's really hard to say who's going to be those top dogs that stand out. But Fresno State, that's a team that you think is going to be a top contender, won the conference last year, and I'm not saying that they can't go undefeated. You look at this record, they definitely can, but the issue is it is an extremely easy record. They're kind of taking a break over the last few years of playing the USCs and Ohio States and Oregons. They're taking a little bit of a break, and they're going to be playing Purdue, who, has had a little bit of a better couple of last seasons. Last year actually representing the Big Ten championship game, but they only won 8 games. It's really down year for that side of the conference. So again, not a powerhouse there for the Power 5. And then Arizona State, who's replacing their head coach. They have an Eastern Washington FCS school and a MAC team here. So Fresno State, they go undefeated. They go undefeated and come up against an undefeated American Athletic Conference team. They're probably not going to square up well. You look at a Fresno State team here that even if they go through this schedule, if they have 1 or 2 losses, they're not going to be ranked very high in the top 25. Boise State, they beat those two teams to start off the bat. They're jumping into the top 20 right away, and they have a chance to climb up towards maybe even making a playoff statement this year. And again, you have to go undefeated to even be able to make that kind of statement, and I'm not saying Boise State's going to do that, but Fresno State doesn't even have a shot at that. The highest ranking that Fresno State can achieve with this record, going undefeated, is not going to be the same as what Boise State can do going undefeated. It just doesn't shine quite as well. So their best teams aren't playing great teams. San Diego State is playing UCLA and Oregon State, but they haven't been a team that's been contending recently. Didn't really have a very good year last year. If you look at teams that might be able to challenge Boise State as far as being teams that could go through and be a New Year's Six contender, so I guess challenge is the wrong word, because I'm not saying challenge in the conference, but I'm saying be a team that could stand out. San Diego State might be able to do that if they were able to go undefeated with UCLA and Oregon State on that record. But again, when you look at those top 3 teams being probably Air Force, Fresno State, and Boise State right now, with nobody else really establishing themselves last year to be another contender that could go through with 10 or more wins, of those 3, the only team that really stands out that looks like they could go through and have a strong resume is Boise State. Now again, you've got to win the games, but that's a good sign right there for Boise State, looking at a team that could be a top contender. And number 2 here is the Power 5 is coming to play. The Mountain West has 8 Power 5 teams coming to play. Now again, the issue is here that a lot of the weaker teams are playing the best Power 5 teams. UNLV is playing Michigan. Wyoming is playing Texas. Hawaii is playing Oregon. So Nevada is playing USC. New Mexico is playing Texas A&M. Those premier Power 5 wins, which would be awesome to get on the board, where if you put them in a Fresno State or Air Force or Boise State category, maybe the Mountain West would have a chance to go out and get them. Unfortunately, their weakest teams are pairing up against the best Power 5. That's typically what you see year in and year out. It is always easy for Hawaii to grab premier Power 5 teams, and Boise State, Fresno State are often struggling to get good Power 5 teams to come and play them because they know that they could lose, and they don't want to risk that. So that is the unfortunate reality here, is that the best Mountain West teams are playing nobodies for the most part, besides Boise State, and the worst Mountain West teams are playing the best teams and don't have a chance of winning. So while you do have a lot of Power 5 teams coming to play, I mean, we'll just list them right off the bat here as an exercise. You've got UCF coming to play at Boise State. Washington State will be playing at Colorado State. Stanford is going to be playing at Hawaii. Kansas is going to be playing at Nevada. UCLA is going to be playing at San Diego State. Oregon State is going to be playing at San Jose. Vanderbilt is going to be playing at UNLV. And Texas Tech is going to be playing at Wyoming. I believe I covered everybody there. But you have some great matchups here for the conference. Unfortunately, even though they're at home for a lot of these teams that aren't necessarily probably going to be able to go out and get that win. But it's great to see the Power 5 coming and playing in the Mountain West stadiums and having a chance for the Mountain West to really bring that in. I mean, that's a really big opportunity. The fact that these teams are being willing to come in and play, and there's probably some kind of 1-3 deal where Mountain West is going to travel to go play at their stadiums. But 8 Power 5 programs at home for the Mountain West is a big win here for the conference. Now, the issue again is going to be the fact that a lot of these teams, like I said, Stanford playing at Hawaii, Stanford's not going to win. Hawaii's not going to win that one. Oregon State at San Jose State, maybe they could pull that off. Wyoming, Texas Tech at Wyoming, no, Wyoming's not going to win that game, especially with what's going on with the program right now. So unfortunately, I don't know how many of these are going to translate into wins. I think this is going to be another bit of a down year for the conference overall as far as their non-conference record goes, unfortunately. But there are some opportunities for Power 5 wins here, and if they can get them at home, get some upsets, it'll be a big deal here for the conference. Third thing that jumps out the board here is that Air Force is once again taking itself out of contention for the rankings. Air Force fans get upset year after year that they go and they have 10 or 11 wins and don't get ranked. Well, Air Force does it to themselves. Look at this horrible schedule. Right off the bat, FCS team. Then they play Sam Houston, which luckily for Air Force is jumping up to the FBS. So that will count as an FBS win. They're jumping up to join Conference USA this year. Maybe Air Force is upset by that. I think maybe they go, man, they tricked us. We thought it was going to be another FCS team, and now they're going to be FBS. I don't know what Air Force's scheduling options here is, what they're looking for, but it's the wrong mindset. This isn't the Air Force teams of some more, I wouldn't say recent past, because recent past Air Force has been really good. So maybe you go back, 6 or 7 years, but this is not the Air Force teams of some late years that was struggling just to get bowl eligible. This is an Air Force team that is trying to present itself as a top 25 candidate, as a team that can compete for the Mountain West Championship games. This is a team that could potentially look at competing for some New Year's Six spots. I mean, you go through, you play Army and Navy. I mean, those are going to be some nice games that you can potentially win there. And then you go through the rest of the conference schedule. Air Force has done really, really well here the last few years under Calhoun. But their schedule is holding them back. And once again, Air Force has put themselves on the back foot. I mean, you have an Air Force team here that's probably going to have to go 11-1 if they want a chance of even getting into the CFP top 25. Maybe they could make the AP top 25. Doesn't have really high standards, but to get into the CFP top 25, you're going to have to be either undefeated or 11-1 with a lot of blowouts along the way to have a chance of getting into the top 25. And it's just so disappointing to see this year after year with the way that Air Force schedules. Sure, Army and Navy, you got to schedule those teams, and those aren't bad teams to have on the schedule. But because you know that you're having 2 Group of 5 teams there, you got to schedule yourself a Power 5, or you've got to go out and schedule a better Group of 5 there if you want to have a chance to put yourself forward as a top contender in the conference, one to be respected nationally. You have to go out and schedule tougher teams than this. It's disappointing to see a team as good as Air Force scheduling as badly as they do. For here, and kind of building off that last point, it's an FCS fest. It's not just Air Force. Every single Mountain West team is playing an FCS team, and you just hate to see it, because this is not what the conference needs right now to stand out. This is not a conference that's being looked at nationally as the best Group of 5. This is a conference that is starting to slide into potentially the 3rd slot overall when it comes to Group of 5 teams. If you want your Group of 5 champion, your conference champion, to have a chance at competing for the New Year's Six, but more importantly next year, the year in 2024, competing for the playoffs, you have to have a conference that's seen as the best Group of 5 conference. that is what the challenge is facing Glory Nevarez right now. The situation that has been left here by Craig Thompson is that the Mountain West is on the decline. It's on the decline nationally. It's not competing well with the East Coast bias. The Sun Belt, which has done a great job in conference expansion and being realignment, being able to bring in some teams. American Athletic Conference seems to be on the rebuild as well. Sun Belt right now looks like they might be taking that spot soon, in the media's eyes at least, as that top group of 5 conference. American Athletic Conference, because of the East Coast bias, because of their great propaganda that they have, is going to remain as a top conference as well. And the Mountain West is looking like they might slide into 3rd place. How do you fight that? Well, you schedule East Coast teams so that you can get yourself in front of East Coast viewers, so you can fight that East Coast bias, so you can get yourself in front of the media and actually have a chance to be looked at as a contender, as a conference. But you also go out and you schedule tough teams, and you schedule teams that, okay, maybe they're not going to be unbeatable. Like, you don't want to have Alabama on every schedule, but you want to be able to have group of 5 or FBS teams on the schedule that you can compete against the other conferences, that you can rank up against. An FCS team in the College Football Playoff Committee's eyes is like a bye week. You might as well not have even played it. Boise State is not, blameless here. They also have an FCS school. I love what Jeremiah Dickey is doing at Boise State. I am advocating that. I'm so vocal in my support of him on all of my social media platforms. But the 2 things that I really disagree with him on is the fact that he thinks we should play an FCS school every year. I really disagree with that. And also the fact that he wants to schedule West Coast teams primarily. That's something we'll talk about here in a second. But FCS schools across the board in every single mountain. This isn't SEC. You can't afford to have cupcake games. You can't afford to have break games. You need to have FBS opponents across the board, and having so many FCS teams in a conference schedule like this, and it's not like this is the first year it's happened, like this is a rarity. It's just something that pops out when you look at this, and it's very, very disappointing. So again, the second thing, just leaning off of what I was talking about just then with some of the things I disagree with, is sticking to the West Coast. You have 2 AAC teams. You're playing Memphis, and then I forget who the second team is that we're playing out of the AAC. But you have 2 AAC teams here that the Mount West is playing. And then you have 3 Sun Belt teams, if I've done my math right there. JMU, App State, and Texas State are the 3 Sun Belt teams that the Mountain West is going to be playing. And that's it. That's the only 5 games that you're going to play, group of 5 versus group of 5, that anybody with a chance at throwing a vote at you really cares about. And the rest are MAC teams, Conference USA. It's not a great look, again, for the conference to be playing up against the 2 weakest conferences in college football. MAC and Conference USA are not worth scheduling. They are so weak. It does nothing for you. You need to be playing those 2 conferences that you're going to be looked at. When you present your champion at the end of the year, you know who you're going to be competing with. You're not going to be competing with Conference USA and the MAC. You're going to be competing with the Sun Belt and the American Athletic Conference. Those are the 2 conferences that are going to be rising themselves to the top layer of the group of 5 that you're going to have to be competing with, that are going to be getting unfair rankings, preseason rankings in the top 25. American Athletic Conference has been in the past, but Sun Belt has a chance of catching up to that there soon. Unfair preseason rankings, unfair media attention, more eyes looking at those teams because of when they play and the markets that they end up playing in. You're going to end up seeing those conferences be getting the majority of the looks, and the Mountain West Conference, because they don't have any comparisons, head-to-head comparisons, they're just comparing themselves against the West Coast teams that they played, are going to drop themselves in the ranking again. It's not FCS teams and predominantly West Coast teams, especially at the group of 5 level. Power 5, the fact that it's a Power 5 team makes up for it a little bit. I would prefer for Mountain West teams to play East Coast Power 5 teams, but just for more eyes, more viewership. But the fact that you're playing group of 5, West Coast, and FCS predominantly across this schedule really, really weakens it as a whole. Last thing that really kind of pops out here right at the top. Last thing that pops out off the top here is that there's going to be some very tough road opens here for a bunch of these Mountain West teams. So starting off with Boise State, the first 4 out of their 5 first games here are going to be really, really tough. This is a gauntlet to come into, especially with a new offensive coordinator that you've got and a freshman quarterback, well, not freshman quarterback anymore, but a young offensive system. You're playing Washington, UCF, San Diego State, and Memphis, and then right there in the middle, you've got North Dakota that you're going to be going up against. So, that's easy game right there with the FCS team. But 4 out of those 5, 2 Power 5, a tough conference game right off the bat, and then Memphis, that is a gauntlet. But they're not the only team in the conference here. They're jumping over to San Diego State. They have some tough games after their first initial 2 games, which should be pretty easy. They then play UCLA, Oregon State, Boise State, and Air Force. 4 games that are probably the toughest on their entire schedule, all in a row, back to back to back. It really works out there in Boise State's favor there, actually, to have that, because San Diego State is going to have to be coming off of a battle, back-to-back battles against UCLA and Oregon State, and then roll in and have to play Boise State. Boise State actually rolling into San Diego State to play, but then having to take Boise State on, and then the next week go face Air Force. I mean, that is a record right there where San Diego State could end up 0-4. Again, this is not a record prediction, but that is a tough gauntlet to have to go through. San Jose State, 5 out of their first 6 games are pretty tough. USC, Oregon State, Toledo, a MAC team, but a team that played pretty well there out of their conference last year, went to their conference championship game, went and won their bowl game. So that could be a team that could challenge as well. And then Air Force and Boise State, that is not an easy run. Utah State, they have Iowa, Air Force, JMU, and UConn right in the middle of all that. They have Idaho State. That shouldn't be much of a challenge. UConn, a team that is on the rise. JMU, a team that is coming to their second year in the FBS and had a great season last year. Was a true media darling there for the Sun Belt, of course, opening with Iowa. And then poor Wyoming. Texas Tech, Portland State. So Portland State, not so much a challenge, but Texas Tech, and then Texas, and then App State. All 3 of those teams, App State, a team that went and beat Texas A&M last year, all 3 of those teams are going to just absolutely crush Wyoming. I really hope that they can come through with at least 1 win in the 3 of those. But when you got to play 2 Texas Big 12 teams and then a team from the Sun Belt that beat a Texas team last year out of the Power 5, that is a tough gauntlet. This is a conference schedule that it's not as exciting as it could be. The Power 5 teams coming to visit, that's awesome. That is a highlight. There are also some low points, a lot of FCS teams across the board, not a lot of opportunities for the top dogs in the conference to shine, and also not a lot of opportunities to stack up against those East Coast teams. It's a schedule, though, that the Mountain West needs to run through. They need to have a good season this year. They didn't show up well last year. Things are shifting around. Conference realignment is happening. The outlook is not the same as it was a few years ago. The Mountain West cannot stand strong and say confidently, we are the best group of 5 conference. They didn't prove that last year. I still believe that they are, especially with how things have shaken up with conference realignment, but they have got to prove that this season with a much better non-conference record overall than they did last season, and they've got to get some Power 5 wins. Some of these teams that are going to be playing these premier teams have got to pull off an upset. There's going to be opportunities when you're playing Oregon State at home, at your home stadium, Texas Tech at your home stadium. You know, there's going to be Washington State at your home stadium. Even though you're not the best team in the Mountain West or one of the top teams in the Mountain West, you have a chance to pull off an upset here, and the Mountain West needs that. This is a big prove-it season for the Mountain West because, again, all of this for 2023, for everyone in the group of 5, this is a setup for 2024. This is a practice year. This is a build your resume year for the playoffs. Playoffs coming in 2024. The highest ranked group of 5 champions no longer going to the New Year's Six. They're going to the playoffs. That is what this season is about. It is building for the playoffs, and the Mountain West needs a strong season to be able to give their champion a chance in 2024 to build off, to have some teams in the preseason top 25s or coming off of 10-win seasons, multiple teams in the bowl games. You need to be able to look back when you're starting 2024. You need to look back on 2023 and say that was a strong season for the Mountain West, and anybody who came through that and then has a good 2024 deserves to be the champion. That they're going to look back and say Mountain West put themselves in a spot to be the top group of 5. Now in 2024, their champion can go and represent in the playoffs. That's what this year is about. Every group of 5 team, every group of 5 conference is competing for that. The Mountain West is in the battle for their existence potentially this season. It's going to be an exciting time. I can't wait until the first kickoff happens. It's going to be a blast. Let's hope that it's a good year for the Mountain West. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe. Let me know what your thoughts are on this schedule, especially from your team's perspective. What you thought of my takes this year on this, or my takes on this conference schedule here for the Mountain West. Like I said, thanks so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe. And as always, go Big Blue!